Victoria 3 is changing drastically, with the most significant changes since release coming in the form of a free update, patch 1.3, and its first paid expansion pack, Voice of the People. From map changes, internal politics, new character interactions, and all sorts of other things, let's jump in and take a look at all of the big changes. Let's start with the paid update, Voice of the People, the new expansion DLC pack for Victoria 3, and then we'll move on to patch 1.3, where there's, thankfully, quite a few major new features and some interesting balance and other changes around the game too. Starting with the major features and Voice of the People though, 60 plus new historical agitators. We'll move on to agitators later if you're unfamiliar. They're a new role, a new political role in the game, quite significant. And here, of course, inside of the paid DLC, we get 60 of them, as well as new journal entries, adding some flavour to France, Algeria, which has changed on the map, and really significant in-game events like the Paris Commune. Of course, this is a French DLC pack, so we're receiving French buildings inside of it, as well as a new UI theme, Art Nouveau, new paper on the map, map room, look and feel, and outfits for the characters. So all sorts of features from the UI that surrounds the pop-ups to the French building models. And of course, the actual map itself have changed and been flavorized with a little bit of that sweet French flair. Other changes include, of course, new events that go alongside many of these things. Character interactions akin to Crusader Kings 3 come in with the new agitator roles. You can make them an interest group leader, for example, or give them command of the military. You could also force a monarch to abdicate under certain conditions. The coup journal entry is one of the big ones that will allow interest groups in government to seize power, or I should say, cause angry interest groups to seize power, because of course it is a coup, as well as a host of new events and some new achievements. Here you can see the new achievements in the game. At the top are the ones associated with Voice of the People, and at the bottom are the free ones that everybody will receive when Update 1.3 rolls out on the 22nd of May. I won't read through all of them, but as you can see, of course, they relate specifically to the DLC, to France, but then more broadly, actually, some wider sort of ideological ones like authoritarian, the 1.3 achievement, or Vox Populi, for example. Now let's talk the freebies, the big changes that are coming to Victoria 3's gameplay. Of course, we have those new agitator characters, which they initially said were just going to be part of the paid expansion, some of these new character roles, but then they sort of loosened that out a little bit. Actually, it's for free. Everybody can unlock their agitators and send them to exile. It's a new, powerful political role that you can control inside of the game with the UI and shop through a list, potentially, of agitators, if you wish, who have been exiled from other countries. And of course, you can use them to drive those new political movements and revolutions. We have the ability to invite agitators, as I say, from other nations that have been exiled, a shopping list, if you will. We, of course, have new character interactions, like with the paid DLC, in this case giving us the ability to interact directly with characters inside of our country. This could be particularly spicy on the modding front. Character interactions on the free side include exiling characters, so you can boot them out. See you later, you agitator. You can also repatriate someone in exile, and royal weddings, everybody, because why not? Moving along, there's also been some reworks in the legal system that we discussed a few weeks ago around land laws, for example, but also putting a law through at all now has 3 stages before it's passed. So you don't just put it in, deal with a couple of events that come up, and then it either happens or it degrades to 0 and you get rid of it and replace it with something else. Now there are 3 stages to passing a law. It will require that it takes a little bit longer, of course. Passing a law is going to be a little bit more involved, but also there are more opportunities for new roles, political agitators, to get involved. I think it's a more robust system and should make it a little bit more interesting to engage with too. Political movements and revolutions feature here as well. Political movements are sort of a new feature. They'll be given a new panel, breaking down supporting interest groups, any agitators and populations who are supporting a political movement against the government or against a policy, for example. This could, of course, also lead to revolution, where we have new map markers and visuals to help demonstrate that just a little bit better. As I mentioned, there are changes to the legal system. Land reform is a whole new suite of laws. There's a new church and state law, state atheism, where you can really drive out the power of the state inside, the power of the church inside of the state. and laws around the economic system. You can ban industry outright if you want, or you could choose to distribute political power a bit differently, with single-party states and technocracies featuring. And finally, of course, there are those new achievements that we looked at earlier, some new journal entries for a variety of countries around the new laws, and some interesting border reworks that we discussed in my last update video. If you weren't there for that, in a nutshell, Algeria has been split into 4 countries. Some culture changes have happened in and around France and Switzerland, and as well as some minor reworks in parts of Africa. Germany, I believe Tahiti, is now a recognized nation-state too. I won't go through every single change, but I will cover some of the major ones, the more interesting ones, but of course, you'll also be able to look at them on screen if there's anything that you think I'm missing or anything in particular that you're looking for. As far as improvements go, political movements, the mechanic that potentially leads to a revolution, can no longer become revolutionary without the support of an interest group leader. So there's some nice fixing things here. Likewise, more radicals from standard of living changes when a country has negative authority. These kinds of things make sense. There's also some opium flavor. Good news. Potential to grow it in states now inside of countries like the Ottoman Empire, Mexico, New Granada, for example. And also characters are more likely to become addicted if their culture is obsessed with it. Fantastic. There's also other resource potential being added around the map, including coal and gold to Morocco and the Sahara to account for historical fields, whaling station potential to a few states around the map as well, based on historical catch data. So it's nice to see different parts of the map being improved, little bits of flavor being added around the edges that I think help to build something that Victoria 3 still needs, and that's more diversity between nations. Of course, the Voice of the People pack will likely do that as well. And a whole load of other states received some changes in line with that kind of minor flavor element or historical accuracy elements. Names and locations of hubs in Japan, Taiwan, for example. They've revised the starting setup around the lower Niger River and Mozambique. Belgium and the Netherlands, looking a little bit more historically accurate with updated population numbers. And the Haitian and Dominican population numbers and cultures have been updated too. So loads of little flavor and accuracy things added in to improve Victoria 3. In terms of AI fixes, in this patch update, it seems to me that it's a lot more about sort of plugging the gaps, fixing some issues, rather than necessarily driving new logic and new ways of thinking. They've fixed a bug, for example, that was preventing the AI with high budget surpluses from constructing high priority buildings. They're also more adverse to overbuilding in states where they just don't have the infrastructure to support it. Likewise, they'll stop building railway buildings in states that have full market access, but literally no workforce. They're better at prioritizing universities and innovation. They have a greater tendency to make a return state war goal into a primary war goal, particularly in cases where they're trying to complete their own journal entries. And a variety of other somewhat smaller changes, things like, for example, the AI is less inclined to seize treaty ports without having an actual reason to want a port there. Small changes to the AI, it is certainly not the most significant part of this update by any stretch, but to be fair to them, it's still nice to see that they're sort of implementing some fixes around the edges with some pretty clear problems, at least by the way that they've described them here. I can't say personally that I've ran into a lot of them or particularly noticed when I have. There are some very interesting balance changes in here as well that will change the flow of Victoria 3. One, for example, they've reduced the chance of bankrolling giving you an obligation from 1% down to 0.2. That's quite a significant reduction in that one, so apologies about that. Moving down a little bit, they've reduced tech costs in the latter eras, Era 4 and 5, to make it not quite so difficult for players to reach the endgame tech. That should speed things up and could be quite significant if you want to get that tech, or maybe if your system struggles with the later game, you might be able to finish it off a little bit faster. A little buff for the British East India Company that now starts with the railways technology. Support for multiculturalism is now found inside of the new humanitarian ideology. I believe there was around 6 new ideologies that have shown their heads, including humanitarians, people who are overwhelmingly positive, and a couple of specific ones to America and perhaps France as well. And there are a variety of other things, most of them relatively small, but they will sort of hopefully shaped together to have a reasonable impact on the game. For example, non-commander characters are less likely to become wounded. Monarchs and heirs now have a variety of factors affecting which interest group they'll be aligned to, and many other things that you've seen on screen. For now, I'll leave the balance changes there. I think they're fairly significant, but of course not the major thing here. They're not part of that major overhaul in 1.3. In terms of the artwork, there are a few nice changes that'll be coming through, including, new map identifiers, for example, for things like revolutions, and some new artwork inside of the paid DLC as well. We also have an option to enable an alternate occupation visual, stripes instead of flags, under the game settings. Visual planes fly over military units for the aerial reconnaissance production method. Military visuals overall have been overhauled. I think we still need to see more visuals from what we've seen and heard about this update. It's not going to completely revolutionize the military visuals, but it's good to see more of those playing through. An important change in the art, alongside a variety of other things that you can see on your screen. Children now wearing age-appropriate, unique clothing, for example, and revised clothing weighting so that children don't wear clothes that clip through their bodies, as well as a few other tweaks to the beauty of Victoria 3. The interface changes are wide-reaching. I'm not going to go through them all here, though, because I think it could be potentially a little bit boring. I also think that most of these changes are in response to new things or changed things. For example, the very first one, they've updated the Law tab, Law Group Panel, and the Law Enactment Outliner item with the improved law enactment system. So we've got a new system, now we've got a new outliner for it. They've attached the associated law enactment events to the enactment item in the outliner for better visibility, associated revolution events to the revolutionary political movement item in the outliner, and so on and so forth. There are changes to outliners, and of course new UI and interface tools, particularly around some of the new features like agitators, right? They feature very strongly here in these changes. Otherwise, you're welcome to, of course, check the sources below, both for the trailer footage that I've used in this video and for the full patch notes on Paradox's forum. In terms of narrative content, there is a lot, right? Of course, we have events, added events that retire agitators, added events about the passing of land ownership, the passing of banned industry, added some agitators present at the start of the game, events that allow you to interact with exile, so on and so forth, right? Many events, not just to do with the new characters, but also to do with a lot of the French stuff, a lot of the nations that have changed, France, Algeria, for example. And of course, those ideologies that we were talking about earlier, including 3 that are unique to France and obviously very French in their nature, but also some overall ones, the positivists that I was talking about earlier, as well as Luddites and socialists making an appearance. Those socialists and the socialist ideology will be added to trade unions once the socialism is researched. That makes sense. And humanitarian, protectionist, Jacksonian Democrat, and that's the American one I was talking about earlier, and authoritarian leader ideologies. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Alongside of that, a suite of new journal entries to go alongside the events. Of course, many of them are focused in and around France, but not all of them. China's fragile unity will not be abruptly ended if the Qing government is overthrown in a revolution, and a variety of other changes here. In terms of performance, I'm afraid if your system's still struggling with a Victoria 3, this may not be the update for you, but 2 changes. Improved performance of tutorial highlights and map particle optimization. Could have an impact on your system. A lot of particles on that map, though I think that maybe you'll be the best judge of that, so I'll leave this section here. For the modders out there, all logging console commands are now renamed to start with logging and log output in a standardized way. And there are many other things on this list. Modding Victoria 3 is honestly outside of my area of expertise. However, as we have mentioned earlier in the video, potentially a lot of new modding potential that's going to come through with character interactions. New character effects such as exile character, remove character, the ability to scope a character's home country, and what modders could do with that kind of stuff if we take it out to the next level, take it outside of just interacting with exiles or the exile pool, for example. You can check out the full suite of changes, of course, again, below. And of course, my friends, a suite of bug fixes. The headlining one was that it's no longer possible to recruit commanders to temporary headquarters, and they've fixed many instances where population, loyalists, or radical values could overflow. I won't go into all of the detail here. Again, I think that the key things that we talked about at the start are the big changes. I won't delve into every minor thing, but it is nice to see actually a few bugs on here that I've encountered myself. Again, not major changes to the game, but significant enough, and they complete a suite of changes that round out patch 1.3. They conclude by kind of summarizing it all together quite nicely. They say, it should be pretty obvious at this point, but most of update 1.3 focuses on increasing both the complexity and your agency over internal politics. Expect to be surprised by some of the situations that can arise from the interplay of the new agitator, revolution, enactment, and petition mechanics, among other improvements and tweaks that we've made. We can't wait to see what political imbroglios that arise in your nations next Monday, and hear how you end up dealing with them. Next week will likely be a brief dev diary from us as we'll focus on our efforts in listening to feedback and planning around the next update. As always, you can find more information on the forums and on the Victoria 3 Discord server. Geez, I'm speaking almost as fast as that guy who reads the terms and conditions thing at the end of the ad infomercials. Anyway, everybody, I think that's enough from me today. Obviously, patch 1.3 is likely the most significant update that Victoria 3 has seen, certainly this year, and comes with a paid expansion pack, Voice of the People. Let me know what you think below. I'll be sure to share some gameplay and my review as soon as I can, and I'll see you next time.